the other aspect of the scaling, I'll brief today, and then we'll go other things. So we stopped here last time. I think is it visible? Okay.
Yes, sir.
See, we are telling about, I was just stopped here yesterday. See, whenever we are making a scale, we should be much more concerned about that. The scale should be reliable. So, and unless and until the scale is reliable and it is having the validity also, we'll discuss about that also. So it cannot be used further. So means a scale or test is said to be reliable when the measurement is repeated by using the same scale under the constant condition, it will give the same result. Means if a scale will be reliable when you use it in measuring something under the constant conditions, and if you find the results are more or less same, so that means you can believe that the scale is reliable in nature. So then ideally one should wish to gauge the reliability by repeating the scale on the same people using the same method. Means it is not that you will use with the some else, you use the same scale with the same peoples, but in a different time you can repeat it and find that if the answer is same, then you will find that this scale is reliable. Such method is known as test-retest method or testing the reliability. Test-retest method, sometimes we tell them in the statistic. Then also we found that testing the reliability. However, there is a practical difficulty with this. Means sometimes what happens, suppose I want you, the respondent deliberately give the same answer to justify and defend their earlier answer. Sometimes. And sometimes what happens, suppose we ask the person, suppose 5 days back, and again we ask him the same question. Sometimes what happens, the respondent may change its answer knowingly, and also sometimes the respondent may forget the what exact answer he has given. So there we face the difficulties. And sometimes what happens, sometimes the respondent also deliberately give the same answer to justify his earlier answer also. It may also happen that the respondent may think seriously when tested the first time, but in the second they may not think before answering. As a result, there is indeed may be change of result between the two tests. Therefore, the test and retest score may not be comparable. So some people who are criticizing this, what they are telling? They are telling that whenever you ask something to a person for the first time, he shows his seriousness. But whenever you went and ask him for the second time, he may not show that some seriousness, for which you will find that the outcome of the test and the retest may not be will be something different, which you may not compare. So that creates again the problem. Another method of test of reliability of a scale is alternate form of methods. Another method of test of reliability of a scale is alternate form of method, in which two supposedly equivalent versions of the scale are given to the same individual and the result are correlated. Getting my point? Another method of test and reliability of a scale is the alternate form of methods. You are giving, when you are asking, you are adopting the alternative methods in which two supposedly equivalent versions of the scale are given to the same individual and the result are correlated. Here what is happening? Means the question is same, what you are asking is same, but the method of asking, the method of interaction is quite different. And if when you are the method of interaction is quite different, then that person may not lose its seriousness in the second time. So the person may behave in the same way which says behaved in the first time. So, and once you get the result in the both the methods, the same questions, that you can correlate and find out whether the things are maintaining the reliability or not. The third method most widely used in measuring the reliability is by split half method. Right? It is the third method most widely used in the measuring the reliability is the split half method. Means you can split something, some of the question you can split and ask sometimes, and the other part you can ask later on. This measure of reliability is a modification of the multiple form of approach. Means what we are doing, only to measure the reliability of that scale, we are adopting the different techniques, different methods while asking the question to the participant. One application of a scale is sufficient to secure the measure since it treats two halves of the scale as if they are two forms, as in the multiple form of methods. Means what we are doing, we are asking half of the question right now, then we are asking another half of the question little later. Again, we are repeating the alternately the same things in a different times. So, which will help us in continuing the spirit of the respondent in both the cases. Because if the respondent loses its spirit while answering, what I told in the first, he may answer seriously, and the second he may not answer seriously. So to maintain that spirit, we are splitting the question and asking in a different period of time. The scale is randomly divided into two halves, and each of the halves is treated as a separate scale and scored accordingly. So what we are doing here, we are not making the complete half of it. We are randomly dividing the question, and while asking, we are mixing the question once randomly dividing, so that it should be each of the halves is treated as a separate scale. It is not that we are using it as one scale, we are using it as a separate scale, and we are scoring accordingly. These two subscales are correlated, and this is taken as a measure of reliability of the scale. So once we ask the questions and get the score, and these two subscales are correlated, and this is taken as a measure of reliability of the scale. Then another question comes here, the validity of the scale. A scale is said to be possess validity when it actually measures what it claims to measure. Get my point? A scale, how it will be, because just like reliability, we have to also measure the validity of the scale, because that is also highly important, because a scale should have the reliability and validity, through that the your justification will be good, because unless and until your questions or your scale is not having the reliability and validity, you cannot properly argue. A scale is said to be possess validity when it actually measures what it claims to measure. Suppose you are wearing a watch, and watch is for time, and if your watch is showing something else, not the time, then that watch is not having the validity. So it means when you are taking a scale, you are understanding, you have fixed that the objective of the scale, what exactly you want to measure from this scale. But if you find that your scale is giving something different, so then what will happen? Your scale will not have the validity. So that's why you should be very much careful that what you should exactly wants to get from the scale. So this is difficult to establish because a scale measures a continuum which is assumed or inferred to exist from the items themselves. This is difficult to establish because a scale measures a continuum which is assumed or inferred to exist from the items themselves. Means what exactly we are doing here? We are because when we are inferring something, we are inferring something. We are inferring something from the existing things. So that's why it is really difficult, because unless and until a scale is having the validity and reliability, it will be difficult to measure something. There are no independent measures which can be used as a criteria of validity for the scale. Yet every scale must have some indication of its validity, because unless and until it has the proper measurement and all, we cannot depend on it. So the question arises, why scaling methods? Why scaling methods? Why we are taking the scaling methods? Why there are, when there are different methods, why we are depending on this scaling methods for our measurement and for our research work and all? See, field workers often ask their informants to group or rank a series of fellow villagers. Right? Because generally whenever we go to the field, we often ask their informant to group or rank a series of fellow villagers. We want to make them a group. Suppose caste group, occupation group, and other kinds of items. No, several points should be noted in this kind of methodology. First, you see, so means when we are going to the field and doing the research and all, what we are doing, we are uh, we used to ask lots of questions to the informants, like, to the peoples and also to our key informant and all. And what we do, we usually make them different groups in our data. Sometimes we look the caste, sometimes we look the occupation, sometimes we look in the land holding. Right? So based on that, if we can classify, and then it will be good. Several points should be noted in this kind of methodology. First is the structured ranking task should be preceded by a considerable amount of work, so that the researcher can give a preliminary structuring to the situation from past and information. So means you have to get the information from your literature now. So while you are ranking the task, it should be preceded by considerable amount of work. What kind of work is already being done in this area, in this aspect, so that the researcher can give a preliminary structuring to the situation from past and information. You got some past and information, so that will help you in establishing the others. Although the field worker may have hypotheses concerning the nature and dimension to be ranked. Although the field worker may have hypotheses concerning the nature and dimension to be ranked, it is extremely important to avoid forcing a particular structure on the informants. Rigid and comments provided by the informants in the course of the ranking operation are a valuable source of additional data. Means while you are interacting, the respondents, they provide different kind of comments, the different region they cite for all these things. So that should be used as an additional data for your research. Participant observation and informal interviews should be used as a follow-up to the structured procedure to obtain the further validation of the ranked results and to fit the ranking and rating into the context of day-to-day behavior in the community. So what exactly happened? You may ask some of the questions to the people and get the information. But how will also you test its validity in all these things? So that means, so when I'm asking something, I am, as a participant observer, I am observing the things from a very close contact. And when I am also, sometimes what I am doing, I am also doing some informal, not only formal interview, as in participant observation, I am also doing some informal interview with the candidates. When I am continuing with some informal interview, continue with the participant observation, what I am doing, I am getting lots of information which will help in measuring the reliability and validity of my scale, and also because I am also collecting not only by using these scaling techniques and getting the information, rather I am also getting the information through participant observation and also my informal interaction, informal interview with the respondents. Anthropologists have devised other kinds of rating and ranking tasks for specialized purpose. One technique for mapping of a behavioral, social, and material domains is simply to ask the individuals to list items and categories. So generally what we do, we sometimes map the behavioral things, the social and material aspects, and we ask in a different way that how the people are mapping all these things. Asking people to create lists not only produces a working inventory of names and categories, but it can also be considered a trial exploration of people's taxonomic system, their way of organizing the information. You see, we use the taxonomy and all, because when we ask something, when suppose I am asking the people's needs and all, so I used to ask them, you please classify what exactly your needs. And also whenever sometimes we ask the peoples that you kindly go for taxonomy. Suppose I want there are people's using different plants for collect. Suppose tribal people living near to the forest area, they used to collect the different things from plants, the roots, the leaves, the fruits. Uh, they use for different medicinal purpose and all, and that too for different kind of diseases and all. So what taxonomy I can do here also, I can ask them to classify uh, the means I can ask them first listed out all these plants which are the things they collect from the forest for their medicinal purpose and all. Then what I can do, I can ask them to classify in a different groups that these are the plants. This is for curing the eye diseases. These are the plants which we use specifically for the stomach diseases. These are the plants which usually we use for some suppose for migraine purpose. Suppose these are the plants which helps us in reducing the diabetes. So what I'm telling here, you see, so means we are classifying again uh, means systems and the into categories. Some researchers have also suggested that the order in which items are mentioned reflect the salience or importance of those items. Highly salient items occur really in the list, while those are lesser significance for the individuals are likely to be mentioned later. So, getting my point, when the people will taxonomize and they classify what they do, they make the kind of these are the things which are very important, it comes first, and the things which are not so important comes later. So means based on the significance they used to classify. There has been an increasing emphasis on the development of measuring instrument, and such instruments are commonly referred as a scale. So we are developing, the people are keep on developing lots of instrument, and that instrument referred as a different scales. Sociologists have given attention largely to two types of scale, those concerned with the social behavior and personality, and those used to measure certain other aspects of the cultural and social environment. So what they do, sociologists have given attention largely to two types of scales, those concerned with the social behavior and personality, and those used to measure certain other aspect of the cultural life. So based on that, we used to ଭାବେ ଅର୍ଜେଣ୍ଟ ଥିଲା କି? ହଁ ନମସ୍କାର, କୁହନ୍ତୁ। Huh. Now there are some urgent call, so which I cannot avoid because that is some include work is there. Okay. So here you see what we are doing. Is it audible? Is it audible? Hello. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Because in between one call came, which is very urgent for the institute, so I cannot avoid it. So okay. So the first one includes that the well-known attitude. We can make attitude scale, moral scale, character test, social participation scale, and inventory scale. Suppose you see when we have a project in the village level, suppose there is a project and we want to measure the people's participation levels. So there what we do, we used to make a scales, and what we ask the people's, we want to measure their participation levels. So there we have to look into that to what extent the people are participating. Either they are simply participating for the sake or they are participating kind of little active participation, or they are simply going and listening others and coming back. So are they giving any suggestion in the meeting? Are their suggestions are well taken? Because you see there are, suppose in a meeting what you will find, the different people also tell, but you will find that there are some specific peoples whose suggestions are well taken, and whenever they speak, the people take it very seriously also, and when others speak, people don't take it seriously. So that's why whenever we are taking this participation scale, social participation scale, we have to make the scale accordingly. And suppose attitude scale, what exactly the people's attitude, people's perception scale, people's opinion scale. So all these things used to come. The second type is illustrated by scale used to study the socio-economic status, the communities, housing conditions, the social institution, all these things we used to also do. The number of diverse scales were designed by researchers in psychology, ethics, education, anthropology, sociology. Different people are using different types of different diversified scales they are using. Basically, scaling methodology is much the same in all fields, and the difference are largely based on content and emphasis. In terms of statistical methodology, different scales can be categorized as arbitrary scales, scales in which the items scale values and other characteristics are largely determined by a panel of judges. So these are the things which is always needed in all these things. So which is highly essential in our part. So sometimes what happen now, what we found that in the scales in which the items or scales values and other characteristics are largely determined by panel of judges. Generally we found that. One second. Okay. In recent lecture, hello. I'm in a meeting. I'll call you later. There's some students are keep on calling me 5 times, 6 times. Okay, the scales based on items analysis, and the scale constructed in accordance with the scale analysis techniques devised by Louis Guttams and his colleagues. Then projective test is there. In addition, the scales may be present as a combination of 2 or more of the 5 basic types mentioned in the above classification. In the present lecture, let us discuss about the rating scales proposed by Osgood, Bogarts, and Thurstone, Likert scale and Gorton scale. These are the different scales we are using. We can discuss on this. So Charles Osgood and an associates have developed the semantic different techniques for investigating the connotational dimension of people's cognitive worlds by means of a systematic interviewing the procedures. In the typical semantic differential task, a subject judges a series of concepts. My mother, Chinese, modern art, etc. Against a series of biopolar 7-step scale defined by verbal opposition, that is usually some people use this kind of scale called good, bad, or some people use hot, cold, fair, unfair, and sometimes the concept is given at the top of the sheet and the subject judges it against each subjective scale by putting his or her check mark in the appropriate position. Suppose we can give +3 is extremely good, +2 we can mark it, +2 is a quite good, +1 is a slightly good, 0 equally good, and bad or neither. Then -1 is slightly bad, -2 is quite bad, 3 -3 is extremely bad. So means we started from +3 and we ended in the -3. There is +3 is extremely good and -3 is extremely bad. So means we are making a scale, means we are going for a 7-point scale here, and 3 scale we are looking into the equally, the extremely good, and -3 is extremely bad. +2 is quite good. The -2 is quite bad. Then +1 is slightly good. -1 is slightly bad. And 0, whether we can mention either equally good or equally bad or neither of them. So means what we are doing means when we are making a scale, here we are giving a ranking and we are maintaining such position ranks in such a way that the scale will be well represented. There will be no problem in the scaling. The respondents rating on the various scales can be averaged in order to explore the range of semantic space assigned to a particular concept. So that should be very seriously looked into. And what exactly we are doing here, that this then can be compared with other concept in the same semantic domain. It is also possible to compare the pattern of response among various groups, for example, culture, subculture, in order to examine differences in the assignments and adjectival qualities such as good and bad. So when suppose we want to measure this good and bad things, so what we can do here, we can formulate this scale in such a way that the good and bad things can be well measured. Using the factor analytic techniques, Osgood and his colleagues found evidences that adjectival judgments in all societies tested tended to cluster into 3 main domains and connotational meanings. They label this semantic dimension, evaluation, potency, and activity. The human beings share a common framework for differentiating the active meaning of the science. The semantic differential techniques can be used in the variety of ways for making the comparison of people's cognitive worlds across culture and societies. Means when we are, if you are measuring the people's cognitive perception, cognitive views, that should be measured in a different way. So then Thurstone's techniques of equal appearing intervals. So these are another techniques. It is the most widely used procedure of attitude measurement. If you are doing the attitude measurement, how to do the measure. The various opinion and items on the scales are allocated to different position in accordance with the attitude they express. How will measure the attitude? If you are measuring the attitude, then we can use Thurstone's techniques of attitudinal measurement. The various steps consisting of this are brief statement expressing attitudes about a particular issue are gathered from a current literature and are especially prepared for this purpose. What you have to do? Suppose you are doing an attitude measurement. So here what you do, how you develop a scale. So you see, unless and until you are having knowledge about the literature, because unless and until you are having a kind of brief knowledge about the kind of you first collect certain kind of information regarding this attitudes of a particular issues. Relating to that, you can collect the information from different literature, then glob this literature, then from that you can explore. This statement should cover the entire range of attitude from extremely favorable to extremely unfavorable, because what I was telling in the last scale, so means your scale should be very balanced, including an adequate number of neutral statements. You should have a very neutral statement from extremely favorable to extremely unfavorable, and in between there should be lots of neutral statements also. There is absolutely set number of statements. These statements should be brief, unambiguous, and relevant, and in such form that they can be endorsed or rejected in terms of definitely expressed attitude. After being carefully edited, the statements are given an arbitrary number for identification of memographed in such a form that they can be got into fairly uniform individual slips of papers. So means you can adopt the different methods while measuring, but the question is, your scale should be very well maintained and it should be very well balanced, because if your scale is not well balanced, so then the real problem will arise. So that's why you should be very much careful. The complete sets of statements are given to a large number of judges with clear, simple instruction to sort them into several fields, usually 7 or 11, or so that the various files represent. Generally, see, always take an odd number kind of things, because either 5, 7, 11, 9. So it depends upon the topics, the things you are measuring. Based on that, yours and this scale mostly they prefers either 7 point or 11 points. So you should be very much careful about this. So then then Bogart social distance scale. The Bogart social distance scale depends upon large extent on the rating of a panel of judges in determining scale gradation. This is another methods, another scales. It is very popular, the Bogart scale and all. That people are mostly using this scale in measuring the things very frequently. A large number of types of social relationships were formulated, and in accordance with the Thurstone method, 100% judges them in terms of increasing and all. So here these items are given arbitrary number from 1 to 7 respectively, because it is mostly the scale is a 7-point scale people usually use in this if they are using this scale. And so see, here, if you are measuring a list of races, religion, occupation, you are taking one points to them, and then you can keep in the left-hand column of the scale, and for using the discovering a person's reaction to his or attitudes. So means you can mention the people's religion and then their attitude in the right side. So people's occupation and then their attitude to some issues. People's race and then their attitude. The subject is asked to give his or first feeling reaction and not the rationalize. We are just asking first their what exactly their feeling and their reaction. So this is the overall things about the scaling and all. And once you use those scales in the field, you will have a more knowledge you will acquire from the field, because unless you use these things in the field, you will not acquire more and more knowledge in the scale. So this is about the scaling and all. So because other things are not required for you. Any doubt on this? Hello.